Hello, people. Hello. So this thing here is called Game of Thrones. Does anyone watches this?
Yeah.
Okay, so there are some people. I don't really watch it, and they made me watch summaries of 7 seasons for this talk. Because we're going to make a comparison with the EU political landscape and Game of Thrones families today. No spoilers.
Spoiler free.
You shall worry not. So the reason why we thought that this is a good idea is because EU topics are not so popular to listen to, and we really think of 2019 as the beginning of a perhaps a period in which Europeans can get more hooked on to these topics, stay more engaged, and follow a bit more episodes of this real-life version of Game of Thrones. So today we have a little plan for the next 20 minutes or so. We will speculate a lot about the shifts in power balance in the EU, influenced by a new European Parliament, a new Commission, obviously Brexit, and the impact. We will talk a bit. What is the impact that this have on the way we do advocacy in Brussels for digital rights? Then we'll give a small overview on the topics that we are planning on focusing on in the next period.
Yes, but before we dive into the details, I just want to give you a quick overview of the main events this year. So the next thing to happen is on 15th of May, where the lead candidates have a live streamed debate. Then, of course, very important, the European elections taking place between 23rd and 27th of May. In July, beginning of July, the European Parliament will have its very first session and will then later in July elect the next Commission President, so decide who is going to sit on the Iron Throne. Then in September, October, there will be hearings of the appointed commissioners, and in October there's going to be the vote by the European Parliament on the next Commission. Scheduled for end of October, for now at least, is Brexit, and then 1st of November the new Commission is going to take office. So, but why are we actually here standing on the stage talking to you about the European Union? Well, Andrea and I, we both work for European Digital Rights, EDRI in short. And you can call us the small folk of Westeros, if you wish, because we represent civil society organizations from across Europe. Right now, there's 42 human rights groups from 20 countries that are member of EDRI and that defend rights and freedoms online. So in Germany you have, for example, the CCC or Digitale Gesellschaft, Digital Courage, FIF, Wikimedia, and also FSFE that are members of EDRI, and we work in Brussels, I forgot to say.
I can repeat that. So we work in Brussels, and we were funded in 2002 with a mission to protect, promote, and uphold civil and human rights in the digital sphere. In 2001, we got this Brussels office, and we, so to say, increased our cooperation with the European institutions. So needless to say, we work on European level. And the last years, we've been focusing a lot on monitoring legislative initiatives and assessing the risks that they pose for our freedoms online, and then intervening, discussing with policymakers about how we can give those initiatives a better shapes for our rights. So obviously, 2019 is a very special year for us because the new European Parliament will impact who we talk to when we want to talk to. The Commission will obviously affect also the legislative initiatives that are being proposed, and Brexit will have an impact too on the way we discuss about our topics.
Might happen, yeah.
Yes. Now, yes, a year with a lot of changes. Overall, we will see a lot of plot twists, betrayal, murders, revenge, mainly because the families, the political families, are changing a lot. Kirsten will get a bit more into detail about that, but they will change names, they will change constituencies. There will be a battlefield of shifting alliances, pretty much. Brexit will come with 75 MEPs leaving the parliament, the British ones, but some of those remaining seats will be reallocated to other member states. And in the end, we will have 46 less seats with 705 members in the parliament standing. Regardless of Brexit happening, the right-wing political spectrum will see an increase in seats. A bit more of the overall aspect to this, we will have 40%, or it is speculated that only 40% of the members of the parliament will keep their seats, the current ones, with states like France seeing even a higher turnover, only 25% of French MEPs maintaining seats. Finally, we are having our digital rights champions leaving the parliament, such as Julia Reda, Mariette Schaake, and Jan-Philipp Albrecht. So we will have to create new alliances with perhaps more and more of the pirates joining the Czechs and the German ones. We're expecting 4 or 5 new people in. So as a disclaimer, it's important to mention that all of our speculations today are based on knowledge that we got from our personal contact with the institutions, but also reports as the one shown here from the European Council on Foreign Relations, and public polls and so on. Take it away.
Yes, so basically we thought it would be easier and more fun we would find a new way to present European politics and the upcoming changes to you by comparing the biggest houses, the biggest groups in the European Parliament with the big houses of Westeros, of Game of Thrones, that are currently fighting for the Iron Throne, aka the Commission presidency. So if you are not following Game of Thrones, then I think it will still be understandable, so please don't leave. And for those who are following or who are trying to catch up with the series, there will be no spoilers, we promise. So in the European Parliament, until very recently, you had 2 big groups that formed some sort of big coalition, the EPP and the SD, so the Conservative Party and the Socialists and Democrats, that held a majority. And, well, you could compare them to the previous alliance between the Lannisters and the Baratheons. And then you also have a couple of smaller houses, the Starks, the Targaryens, the Boltons, and the Greyjoys. But yeah, let's go first to King's Landing, the seat of the EPP. So the EPP is the conservative center-right group, and the German CDU-CSU politicians, they are part of this political group. They have held the Iron Throne for the past 15 years. So they had the Commission presidency for a quite long while. And the EPP, much like the Lannisters, they are good at political games, and they do anything to protect their family. So they want to show unity, even though there might be disputes cooking below the surface. And yes, many polls indicate that this grand coalition with the SD will no longer have a majority in the next European Parliament. So that's a big change. And the EPP is, well, they might lose seats. Currently they have 217 and they might be down to approximately 189 or even down to 182 if the Brits exit. And then also what was more recently in the press, the Hungarian party Fidesz is suspended only for the time of the elections and they might be back afterwards because, well, the EPP cannot afford to lose more seats. Right, now let's jump to Storms and home to the great house of the SD. So the SD reunites the Socialists and the Democrats and is center-left in orientation. And well, in Germany, the SPD members are part of this group. And like the Baratheons, they once held great political power, but they are slowly disappearing now. So most polls project a loss of seats of 40. 40 seats less is quite huge. They could even lose 54 seats if the British members exit. So it's basically the group that suffers most from Brexit. Now let's move to Dragonstone, yes, where the House of the Liberals is located. So ALDE, which is short for the Alliance of Liberals and Democrats, is a centrist liberal group. And it has been a strong force a long time ago, and well, the German FDP members are part of this. And in the past months, there were rumors that this center liberal group would fuse with Macron's La République en Marche. So the center might actually be back as the third biggest force in the European Parliament, at least. Then it has also been announced already that the name ALDE will disappear, so this whole central liberal group will be called something else. And Macron, just like Daenerys Targaryen, they look like nice people, and they want to bring peace and unity to the world, but actually, well, below the surface, they can be pretty scary and are a bit edgy. And they both want to fight the populists as hell. The polls show that, well, they might be increasing seats then if Macron teams up with them from currently 70 up to 95 or 100 seats. So the EP, the European Parliament, will be finally balanced between the three biggest groups, the Conservative Party, the Social Democrats, and the Central Liberal. Yeah. So let's move up to the north, to Winterfell, home of the Green Group. Yeah, the Greens, EFA, they unite the ecological and left-wing groups, and the German Bündnis 90 Die Grünen and the German pirate Julia Reda, they are part of this group. So they were really the first ones to alert us about climate change and that winter is coming. And just as the Greens teamed up with the SD before, well, in the past, the Starks had an alliance with the Baratheons. Now that the Baratheons are disappearing, the Greens are trying to, well, they are growing and they try to defend their own space. With the rise of the right-wing and extremist groups in the parliament, it's much more unclear how the alliances will play out. Well, for our topics, for digital rights, it could be possible that there will be more cooperation with the center liberals, but it also depends which ones, I guess. In terms of seats, they might increase just a tiny bit. The polls indicate 5 seats more. Or, well, they would stay the same, basically, if the Brits exit.
Yeah. Right. In the Iron Islands, the Nordic Green left is situated, and just like the Greyjoys, they're quite split internally. They have members that are quite fond of the European Union, some that are not so much. Left-wing party group represented by the German Die Linke from the national German context. Currently, they have 52 seats, and with the UK standing during the parliamentary elections, they're expected to have 55, so a small increase. After Brexit, we're looking at perhaps them having 56 spots. These small Eurosceptics groups are a very interesting thing to look at for the next period. We have compared them with the Baltans because they have a tendency to do the dirty jobs of the EPPs, being a bit more cruel, a bit more populist, and a bit less diplomatic in their discourses. Individually, they might seem insignificant, but together their star is rising. So this is something to look very closely at. The ECR, the Conservative Reformists, the EFDD, the ENF, some GUE members, some unassigned members, and EAPN, something I will get back to, all of these that I mentioned are expected to be the second largest ideological bloc in the European Parliament. Over 35% of the seats will be held by them. And this will play an important role. Now, EAPN, what I mentioned earlier, the European Alliance for Peoples and Nations, springs from ENF. It is expected to form as a group with representatives from over 10 countries, including Liga, Salvini's Italian deputy Salvini's Liga. Now, if this would indeed become reality, EFDD has high chances to be dissolved, and ECR will most likely lose a lot of members who will join this right-wing extremist alliance. As a group, they're expected to be fourth largest in the parliament, and even perhaps compete for the third spot with ALDE. Now, when it comes to the way decision-making is happening in the parliament in this new context, Kirsten mentioned that the SNDs and the EPPs, even if they agree on something, they no longer held majority, which means that they need to invite others on the table to reach consensus. This means that consensus will be more difficult to reach. This also has an impact on international agreements to be signed. It is predicted that a lot less agreements will be signed because Europeans' position, EU's position, will be less likely to become concrete. Now, the group with the majority, with the power to get majorities in the parliament, will also most likely have the power in the European Commission and will determine the president. And Kirsten also mentioned ALDE having a very important, unique position in securing majorities. This is why it is perhaps not too far-stretched to speculate that the power they get in the parliament could be traded for a president position in the European Commission. The presidency has been EPP in the past 15 years, and of course EPP is still a strong candidate for the European Commission with Weber. If he would be voted down after the EU Council proposes him for the European Parliament, there is another strong candidate, the French Barnier, coming from the same EPP. So EPP has very strong first option and second option. Of course, there's the Social Democrats Timmermans, who has been quite popular in the public debate so far, but politically speaking, he doesn't really have any chances for presidency. Now,
yeah, right. So what are the impacts of all this, of all these changes on digital rights and freedoms and on the way that we do digital rights advocacy? So all these developments definitely make room for new ways to influence policy making in Brussels, and this means that we also need to find new ways and allies to win political fights. Going to Brexit shortly, in the short term, nothing much will change because the decisions of the European Court of Justice still need to be implemented there. And the UK also has a couple of national implementations of EU legislation, such as the privacy rules in the form of GDPR, net neutrality, and so on. And they will stay in place. But with a full Brexit in the long term, the future of all these national implementations is much more unclear. On top of this, there is pressure to deregulate IT companies because, well, the UK needs to find a way to compensate for the loss of access to the digital single market. And this, of course, might be very bad for our rights and freedoms. In terms of the changes in the European Parliament, so what do we do when winter has come to the institutions? So some might think that now we might need to start talking to all these right-wing extremists and populists and Eurosceptics and what have you. But we think that that's not necessarily the only or the best solution. First of all, as Andrea said, as many old digital rights champions, parliamentarians that were fighting for our topics are leaving the parliament, it will be very important for us to find new people there and new allies. And then, of course, the Centre Liberal group that will have a king-making role in the next parliament will also be an opportunity to create majorities for our dossiers. And the changing political landscape. Yeah, you can go to the next one. No. Ah, yeah, sorry.
I have to say something
yes.
about the national landscapes. So because the majorities in the parliament are not so easy to secure nowadays, us talking to people in Brussels will not be enough. This is why advocacy at national level is crucial. Pressure needs to come from the national level to Brussels also. And we have seen from the copyright defeat that young people care about a free internet. We have seen that they can be active, and we have seen that they quite lost some trust in the EU. So this means that we need to work together at a national level to foster pro-European messages, to foster communication between people and their representatives, and work together to secure digital rights. This is also a quick shout out that if you do want to get involved, either come to our meeting tomorrow, our workshop on digital rights, or get in touch with your EDRI members in your countries. The map is also on our site that you've seen.
So now in terms of substance, the changing political landscape doesn't only have an impact on how we do digital rights advocacy, but also on the substance and on the files that will be coming up. So three main areas are, first of all, platforms regulation, secondly, security, and thirdly, privacy. For the first topic, platform regulation, it's going to be an immensely important and huge topic of the next term. And it's basically, well, the question is how platforms can take down illegal content and how they might be held liable for what users upload to their networks, to their, well, services. It started a bit in the past years with the copyright and the terrorist content debates, but in the next term, this is going to be a much broader discussion. And the thing is that the center-right doesn't really like the big US tech. And so it's possible that there will be more efforts to focus on the big players, which doesn't sound like a bad idea per se. But if the legislation is badly drafted and if smaller players and media fall within the scope, then there could potentially be huge collateral damage for our rights and freedoms. So the main file that we will be seeing in this area is the reform of the so-called e-commerce directive. Which will be renamed, I think, as we heard, into the Digital Services Act. And then part of this whole platform regulation discussion, of course, is the question of algorithms, how they are used by platforms, and how transparent or how discriminatory they are.
When it comes to security, we already know by now that terrorism and cybersecurity are prioritized on the EU Council's policy cycle for 2018-2021. With the rise of right-wing political ideologies in the European Parliament, it's not, again, far-stretched to guess. Anti-immigration and surveillance law will be quite hot in the next period. Again, we're also looking at data retention being reborn, a file that EDRI members have killed in the past in the EU Court of Justice. The third thing, Kirsten already mentioned, the regulation on online terrorist content. Currently, this has been upheld in the European Parliament after a, guess what, content filter on online terrorist content has been proposed. So far, it hasn't gone further, but the risk is still there, so it needs further monitoring. The final thing is e-evidence that refers to law enforcement agencies accessing data cross-border. And this is an ongoing file that we'll also be monitoring in the future.
Yes, now, privacy. So there will be still, of course, some major privacy fights to win. Currently, there's a reform going on that's called e-privacy privacy reform, and that defines basically how, well, the confidentiality and the privacy of your electronic communications. And then there's also going to be a need, again, to defend encryption. We've seen in Germany recently that law enforcement pushed for prohibition of Tor, and the German Bundesrat also discussed the proposal to criminalize Tor hidden services. So that this might be coming up at EU level as well, especially since France and Germany tried to push for encryption backdoors back in 2017 already. We're nearly at the end of this talk.
Final slide.
Yes, final slide. It doesn't look so good for European democracy and our digital rights in the next term. But then again, I mean, we thought many times before that the end was near for digital rights, but we still kept on fighting. And looking back, the EU actually did also some good things for our rights and freedoms. Since the last legislative term, we have stronger privacy rules in the form of GDPR. We have EU-wide net neutrality protections, and more recently also whistleblower protections. So it's not all doom and gloom.
So we kept telling you how winter might be coming, and now we're telling you that actually the EU is really great and has been doing good things for digital rights. And really the truth is that the EU is what you make out of it. So even if right-winger ideologies are on the rise, and even if winter might be coming, it just happens that we are quite fond of winter sports. And just like any other winter sports, sports require good gear and good practice. And we've got the practice. So we're asking you to give us that good gear. Go out and vote competent candidates for the European Parliament so we have good people that we can work with. And we believe that with our practice and the good gear that you're giving us, it's really, we can survive any winter. Thank you. One
more thing. One more thing, we have a digital rights meetup tomorrow at 12:30 at Meetup Space 1. And there, if you have more questions, you can ask us all about it because, well, the 30 minutes were not enough time, of course, to go into details. So, yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you.
We